You know why Iron Man's my favorite character?
Why?
You know Tony Stark is the record leader in the Avengers for having the most STDs.
So guys, we were all here last week when we were talking about Captain America, right?
What the fuck are you talking about?
I don't know if Mark was all here, but I mentioned a little bit that we were talking about Tony Stark this week. So I spent a lot of time thinking about him, probably about like the past 10 hours or so. And all I could think about is how selfish he is as a person. Tony Stark's journey began with him trying to live up to his father's dream and his legacy through the company. And from that point onward, Tony Stark does everything for himself. He creates Iron Man for himself. He starts creating different suits for himself. He falls in with the Avengers for himself. Everything he does leads back to him. In Avengers 2, he wanted to create Ultron so he wouldn't have to protect the world anymore and he could be with Pepper Potts so that the world...
He could retire.
Yeah, he could not have to be Iron Man anymore.
Okay, so, Scarlet Comet, you're going to be arguing that Tony Stark is one of the most selfish superheroes in the world. That's a pretty heavy argument to be using. I want to counter from the very get-go that Tony Stark is the most altruistic superhero. And you want to know why?
Why?
Because he's willingly having sex with Gwyneth Paltrow and taking that crazy heap of a mess off the table and saying, I'll take one for the team, guys. It's fine. Here's my contribution to society. Come back with how he's selfish. Yeah, thought so.
I'm flabbergasted as to how that's your argument. I don't even know where to go from here. Going back to Tony Stank in the beginning of Iron Man, you know, it all leads back to Jensen, the doctor in Iron Man, his debut film, who created the electromagnet with a car battery inside of Tony Stark's chest to keep the shrapnel from pushing its way through the veins into his heart to kill him. From that point on, Tony Stark and Jensen have a close bond in that cave, building the first Iron Man suit to escape. Jensen dies to save Iron Man, and he sees that guy can give up his life. The way I see it, Tony Stark was in the suit, and it's not powering up in time, and Jensen's like, I'll save you, Stark. You have more to live for than I do.
Which is ridiculous.
Selflessly.
Can we talk about that point right there? Jensen's one of the most renowned doctors in the world, right?
Yes.
At the time. He's like, that's why he was kidnapped. And he looks at this billionaire playboy who just probably got done fucking one of those U.S. soldiers on the convoy. And he's like, you're better for this world.
I think
which is quite stupid.
So I think it's just more towards his intelligence more than anything else.
Maybe he sees the potential with him taking missiles and iron and made a suit out of it. Either way, Jensen, his selfless act is what Tony Stark is trying to live up to. He's trying to live up to that and his father's name, which is why he took over the company. Tony Stark's whole legacy as Iron Man is built around him trying to live up to other people. He wants to give back to Jensen's memory, he wants to give back to his father's memory, then he wants to live up to Pepper Potts' needs. And I feel like that's a huge theme for what creates Iron Man as a symbol, especially during Civil War. Iron Man stands up because he wants his beliefs out there. He created Ultron for that reason. He wanted Ultron out there because he felt that would be better. Mm-hmm. He creates his police force. His own entities are out in the world, and you see the civilians, the way they react to it. They see those robots and they start throwing stuff at them. They're like, no, Tony Stark.
Well, also those were Eastern Europeans. That's how they react to anything.
I don't know if we're allowed to say that.
Why? Do they have internet there?
Oh, I don't know. Ask your friend.
Well, she's American, so that's even worse.
Well, she was just there is what I'm getting at. She could see if they have it. So, as we saw in Age of Ultron, everyone was so angry at the Avengers for Ultron being created. It was just Tony. Everyone, all the rest of the Avengers took the heat for it. Tony was the only one that created him with no one else's knowledge.
And he had no problem being like, yeah, it was all of us.
Oh, he pushed that off on everybody. I mean, Bruce Banner knew about it, but even then...
Yeah, but Bruce Banner was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, he saw him, was like, and Jarvis was like, hello, sir, what are you doing? And
that's the best Jarvis impression.
It was terrible.
I have that information you needed.
I am Mr. Roboto. But I mean, everyone was against Ultron, and Tony Stark's like, no, I'm going to do this because I know what's best for the world. And he almost destroyed the entire world off of that idea. And, as we can see, Tony Stark does everything to fix his own mistakes. Ultron being the biggest one. He goes into the Sokovia Accords. You see Tony Stark, and he is almost a self-fulfilling prophecy where he does an act, doesn't like it, and he goes back to correct it, making things worse.
Well, he's the type of person we meet throughout the world through Trump supporters, where the ends justify the means because he's a futurist. There's a lot of talk in the sci-fi world with how much futurism can affect a person in our world today. A lot of the best technologies come from futurists. If it wasn't for sci-fi in the early 40s, 50s, and 60s, we probably wouldn't have the space program we have now. We would definitely not have Elon Musk and the types of people like him if it wasn't for the sci-fi around us in the culture. Tony Stark, as a futurist, is now diving into this dangerous territory of he knows best. And he knows how to get to that best point.
I mean, he created the first power suit, like the first legitimate power suit in the entire world. And everyone tries to match up. You see Hammer Technologies and Iron Man 2. They try and create it, and he did this in a cave. He has this ego built around what he's created.
Around the name Stark.
Oh, definitely.
I think the ego is driven heavily from the name Stark. And one, he doesn't have a world war to fight for. You know, how many older generations say about our generation because we don't have a world war to fight and to protect the idea of democracy and this giant offensive. Stark doesn't have it, so it's almost like, oh, he's creating these problems. It's like, the millennials, they created ISIS. You heard that here first. Millennials created ISIS.
I don't know if you guys have any ideas for where Tony Stark can go from here. I mean,
to hell?
He's already tried to give up the mantle. He was, what did he call himself?
Well, he tried to give it up to an inanimate idea, and also before that to Ultron. And he tried to give it up, and then also to his the shield, the Iron Shield, or whatever the fuck he called it, to protect the Earth. And he tried to give it. He's always trying to give these things up to an inorganic thing that, truthfully, can't protect people. You can't be protected by an inorganic thing. You can only be protected by other people. And Captain America knows that. One, I think, is because he grew up in the World War II setting.
He sees how much people rely on each other. That's why him and Bucky have such a close bond. Tony Stark's always been alone. He had no siblings. He had no friends. He meets the Avengers, and he's like, oh, maybe they want to be like me, but I have to stay steps ahead of them.
Oh, that actually could make a lot of sense for his snarky remarks to all the other Avengers. Like, he's always commenting on how they're better than him, or how he has to finance the group because they're poor.
Terribly snarky. So bad.
They should call him Snarky Man.
Yeah, I think his main problem is just go ahead and step away from his name and actually step up, rather, go ahead and become the Iron Man instead of trying to pawn it off to something else that would fail, because even though he truly believes all in tech, that's his whole sole purpose, is technology is going to be the way of the future, which with technology, you always have to babysit it, basically.
Yeah, you have to watch it. I mean, that's why a lot of the futurists now believe that AI will incur the wrath of God and end humanity. Mm-hmm. So,
Age of Ultron. Yeah.
You see,
I thought you said Asians, and I was like, that could be right. I mean, China's on the right, and also Russians qualify as Asians.
Yeah, qualify. Yeah, they're in Asia.
Anyways,
no, we saw at the end of Civil War, he yells out, "My father made that shield. You don't deserve it." That's projection, if anything.
Yeah, well, I mean, it shows like, oh, his dad, just because he created it, is the person that most deserves that shield. Whereas Captain America took down a fucking helicarrier with it. I mean, he beat the whole Nazi army underneath the reign of the Red Skull. He did much.
Where was Howard Stark those 70 years that Captain America held onto that shield?
Oh, when he was in the ice?
Yeah.
He was fucking Agent Carter.
Why would Howard deserve that shield if Captain America held onto it for so many years?
He was stuck in ice. I feel like that's defaulting. I mean, Captain America could not possess that shield.
But then but Howard didn't want it back, obviously. He stopped looking. He found the Tesseract and was like, oh, Steve Rogers who? And then left and took Carter.
I think the Tesseract went down with him.
No, because they found it. They found the Tesseract.
Yeah.
At the end of Captain America: First Avenger, he's shooting sonar down through the ocean, and then
that's right. Well, they think Captain America's dead.
Yeah,
which is funny because you can't kill those pecs
or those biceps. Another best scene out of Civil War when Bucky was staring at him hold the helicopter. One of the best scenes in Captain America.
Oh yeah, and he's like, "Should I be escaping?"
I feel like this is turning into a Captain America fanfic again.
I mean, that's fine because Iron Man's always stealing Captain America's movies anyways.
We're trying to push up Captain America. He's like the little brother that couldn't get up above his
You know what
brother.
is kind of crazy? Because Iron Man doesn't make an appearance in The Winter Soldier, right?
No, not at all.
And that's the biggest push towards the Civil War. between the Sokovia Accords.
The Iron Man didn't get a shot in the movie?
No. The idea behind the Winter Soldier with the NSA style shield.
Oh, yeah.
Watching everybody, controlling everybody's movements, making sure they're doing right. And Iron Man wasn't in here around. I feel like that was a nice precursor to what he was going to do in Civil War.
And then he just stepped up to the plate of what S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted, and then took that idea.
And I like that.
That's why I like Hawkeye at the end of Civil War, when he's like just staring him down, giving him shit. And I'm yeah, Hawkeye finally doing some good.
So we saw in Thunderbolt Ross even, he played on Tony Stark's futuristness. He was like,
that's a word.
He went out and took all these different events throughout the Marvel Universe and said, it's y'all's fault. All of y'all's. And Tony Stark ran with it. He tried to help lessen his guilt that he has throughout the entire cinematic
he plays
universe.
On that, and he reminds him of Pepper. He reminds him of
everything.
All the wrongs he's done. He reminds him of how great his dad was. All these different things that will ruin Tony Stark.